Hey everyone, it's Congressman Joaquin Castro, proud to represent my hometown of San Antonio, Texas, here in the U.S. House of Representatives. And it's pretty much the end of the day. The legislative business is over and people are still giving floor speeches over there after hours. But I wanted to get with you all on three things this week. Number one is ICE, number two is war, and number three is healthcare. Y'all have seen by now the lawlessness and the recklessness of ICE. You've seen what they did to Renee Good in Minnesota. They shot her in the face and killed her. You've seen the public backlash and the outcry because of that. Most Americans believing that ICE officer should be prosecuted. That's what I believe, that he should be held accountable. At the same time, you heard J.D. Vance, the vice president, say that ICE officers have total and complete immunity. What do you think that does when the vice president of the United States says that no matter what an officer does, whether it's legal, illegal, fair, or unfair, that officer is going to have total immunity? It creates chaos. It creates lawlessness. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And to be honest with you, it's gotten worse since that shooting. ICE is now responsible for multiple deaths of people in their custody. They're literally going door to door, sometimes at residences, sometimes at businesses, looking for brown people. You may have seen that video of that young Latino boy, teenager, at Target, who was taken by these ICE officers. He told them, "I'm a U.S. citizen." And they didn't listen. They dragged him in the van. They took him down the street, apparently to a Walmart, after they beat him up, and then they dumped him outside. There's case after case after case now where it's not just about undocumented immigrants. For people that are saying or still believe that ICE is just targeting criminal undocumented immigrants, it's clearly not that. They're targeting right now people who look brown. There were reports today about ICE going door to door in South Texas, in Donna specifically. In San Antonio, we saw that big incident several weeks ago. So I support holding Kristi Noem, the Secretary of DHS, and ICE accountable. I'm going to support the impeachment proceedings resolution on Kristi Noem. And next week, we will vote in the House of Representatives on ICE funding. I'm voting no. There's no way I'm voting to support what's going on. And I hope, because your voice is very powerful, that you'll let your legislators know, your members of Congress know exactly what you think. I'm not supporting this lawlessness, this recklessness. ICE should be disbanded. It was created in the early 2000s, and it has become a rogue agency that's no longer about immigration enforcement. It's about racial profiling. It's about harassment. It's about lawlessness and recklessness. Now, I want to be clear about something because, during this whole debate, people will say, "Oh, well, you're against ICE, so you don't want immigration enforcement." That's not what I'm saying. As a nation, we're going to have immigration enforcement. But it's not going to be done by this reckless agency in this lawless way. It should be disbanded. Let me know what y'all think. I know people have different opinions, but I want to hear what you think, especially my constituents, obviously, in San Antonio. The second thing I want to talk to you about is war. During the Christmas break, Donald Trump took us to war. Took us to war with Venezuela. Some people say, well, we were only there like a few hours and we used missiles on them. There was a massive military buildup for a few months. There was a massive military exercise to go get Maduro. It was a war. And the president has not ruled out doing more. But since then, he's also suggested that he may take us to war, not only with Venezuela, which has already happened, could happen again, but also with Greenland, with Colombia, with Mexico, among others. Now, bear in mind, like, this is supposed to be the president who pitched himself as the peace president. He was supposed to take us out of these forever wars. And now he's using the language of forever war. We're either going to spend billions or trillions of dollars in the United States for things that as Americans we need to live in a country of opportunity. Healthcare, childcare, make sure rent is affordable, make sure people can go to college or vocational school, pursue their dreams, to do whatever they're going to do. We're either going to spend money here or we're going to spend money over there. And he's talking about spending potentially billions of dollars in Venezuela to run their oil industry. And that's one country. If you go to Greenland, if you go to Colombia and do the same thing, you go to Mexico, obviously, you're not talking about billions of dollars, you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars. And the reputation and the standing of the United States completely damaged. As it is, you already have countries that are going around the United States. They're figuring out how they can build business and trading relationships with each other. So that means that our businesses in the United States are losing that money. They're losing it to other countries and the companies in other countries. And so, before the December break, I had filed a resolution with Jim McGovern and Thomas Massey, a bipartisan resolution, to stop the president from taking military action in Venezuela. We lost that vote by 2 votes. It was 213 to 211. Well, that resolution has since been refiled by Jim McGovern, and it will become right under the rules. Just a quick explanation. Once you file what's called a privileged resolution on this, it's got to sit for 15 legislative days. So the weekends, for example, don't count. They've got to be days where we're actually in session. So it will become ripe on around January 22nd. And so we've got to make a decision exactly when we want to vote on that. Do we want to vote on it immediately when it becomes ripe, or do we want to wait, a few days or a few weeks to monitor the situation? But I believe that there will be similar war power resolution votes if the president insists on going to war in places like Greenland or Colombia or Mexico. And so again, your voice made a difference. All your emails, all your outreach to congressional offices, all your social media comments. The reason I say that is because in the Senate, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia had a similar resolution that passed in the Senate. There were 5 Republican senators, and Trump gave them hell after the vote, but 5 Republican senators who voted with Democrats to block the president's further military action in Venezuela. In other words, saying you can't do any more military action until you come to Congress to get permission for what you're going to do. And so we are hoping to do the same thing in the House, and your voice, it makes a difference. It matters. Remember, for those of us in San Antonio was Military City, USA. There are very few places around the country or around the world that have a larger number of active duty military members and veterans in our city. So what happens militarily, whether our nation goes to war or not, it's a big deal in San Antonio. So please, I hope that my office and Congress will hear from you. And then finally, a big thing for everybody, including me, is the cost of healthcare. And y'all know that for a long time, Democrats were pushing to make sure that these Affordable Care Act subsidies or those Obamacare subsidies were extended beyond January 1st. And we were battling with Republicans, and there were a few Republicans who agreed with us, but most Republicans didn't. We were trying to extend these subsidies out because those subsidies were making healthcare insurance affordable for people, and without them, people's bills, that the cost of healthcare coverage, the premiums, would go up hundreds or thousands of dollars a year. And those subsidies have expired, unfortunately. Now, your voice is making a difference. because in the House of Representatives, we won a vote, and I think it was 17 Republicans, a larger number this time, that voted with us. Remember, there was a discharge petition to put this to a vote. That discharge petition goes around the speaker, and that when we took that vote, I think there were about 17 Republicans that voted with Democrats to make sure that those subsidies survive. Your voice matters now because that has now gone over to the Senate, and the Senate needs to take up that bill. The United States Senate, the House has already done its job. The United States Senate has the power now to keep those subsidies in place. And I'll just give you an example in my own life. In 2026 versus 2025, the cost of my healthcare coverage for the same plan went up $2,400, $2,400 for the year, so $200 a month for the exact same coverage. And I've heard from a lot of y'all, in San Antonio, we put a call out in our newsletter and in text asking people to let us know how they're being affected by this healthcare situation. And we had hundreds of responses of people that wrote back about how the lapsing of these subsidies is hurting them and it's making health insurance unaffordable for them. And so please continue to speak up. We've got to get the Senate to make sure that they take up this legislation and that they reinstate these healthcare subsidies. And y'all, this has been a really intense time. There are a lot of folks out there who are either economically feeling a pinch. You go to the grocery store, the price of groceries keeps going up. December was one of the worst months for inflation that we've seen in the last 3 years. So the price of things keeps going up. The cost of living is not getting any cheaper. And then you've got, these things like the president going to war in the middle of the morning, 2, 3 in the morning, and then ICE that's going out there and going door to door and intimidating different communities. And no community, including San Antonio and South Texas or anywhere else, is immune from that. And so I want you all to stay in touch. I will get back on here and explain everything that's going on, but I know that it's very intense right now. So may God bless you, Godspeed to everybody, and we'll see you soon.